He was born fragile, mocked by others, but turned pain into power and his body into art. From a shy, insecure boy, he became a symbol of faith, discipline, and determination in the world of bodybuilding. A story about courage, self-control, and the power to rewrite your own destiny. Today, we'll meet the man who proved that muscles can carry a soul, and that true strength always comes from within. So you know the drill. Grab your pre-workout and come along, because this story is going to fire you up to never give up on your dreams. Bob Birdsong was born in 1948 in the U.S. state of Tennessee and grew up among the simple landscapes of Kentucky. From a young age, his life was marked by emotional and physical challenges. He used to describe himself as a skinny, stuttering kid, someone who always tried to stay out of sight. Even his last name, Birdsong, unusual and melodic, became an easy target for teasing. Bob carried that bruised self-esteem for years, until he discovered the life-changing power of willpower and self-belief. His teenage years became the turning point. At 14, after flipping through muscle magazines filled with stories of men who sculpted their bodies through discipline and grit, Bob saw a way out. Bodybuilding wasn't just about size. It was about control, resilience, and identity. The insecure kid started lifting makeshift weights, determined to prove to himself that he could become stronger, inside and out. At first, training was an escape. Every rep was a silent answer to the insults he had heard growing up. Slowly, that frail body began to change, and with it, his mind. Bob didn't just want admiration. He wanted respect, balance, and above all, confidence. Between rusty barbells and big dreams, the first version of the man who would one day stand on the world's biggest bodybuilding stages began to take shape. After high school, Bob made a bold move. He left the countryside and headed for California, the beating heart of the 1960s fitness culture. There, he enrolled at the prestigious Art Center College of Design in Pasadena to study fine arts. That choice revealed something few knew about him: an artistic soul behind the muscle. While most people saw only size and power, Bob saw symmetry, proportion, and aesthetics, elements he would later apply in shaping his own physique. During that time in Pasadena, he also started working as a model. His athletic frame and strong features caught the attention of several studios, including the legendary Cult Studio, famous for celebrating the male form in an almost sculptural way. The same Bob who once avoided mirrors now found himself in front of cameras, learning how to turn vulnerability into expression and insecurity into art. That artistic phase would shape how he viewed bodybuilding for the rest of his life. To him, the body wasn't a machine, it was a canvas, something that could be refined, balanced, and presented to the world as a living work of art. The early 1970s marked a new chapter. After years of training and patiently building his physique, Bob decided to test himself on a bigger stage: bodybuilding competitions. His debut came in 1971 at the prestigious AAU Mr. America, one of the most respected contests in the United States. The young newcomer placed 21st, a modest result at first glance, but one that became the starting point for an incredible climb. More than a loss, it was an awakening. His first taste of stage pressure, bright lights, judges' scrutiny, and the chase for perfection. Bob walked away from that experience with something far more valuable than a trophy: the certainty that he could improve. He analyzed every detail, studied the veterans, and learned from his mistakes. Each workout became a lesson, correcting weak points, perfecting proportions, and mastering his posing. Within a year, that shy kid from Tennessee was transforming into a confident athlete. In 1972, he came back to the stage with a new look, a new attitude, and a newfound confidence that impressed everyone. He placed second at both the Mr. California and Mr. Western America, clear proof that his dedication was paying off. Those podium finishes changed everything. Bob realized that competing among the best required more than muscle. It required an artist's eye. He fine-tuned every detail: the angle of his poses, the rhythm of his breathing, the balance between symmetry and size. Everything was crafted to convey harmony and presence. In an era when bodybuilding still valued classical aesthetics, Bob embodied that ideal effortlessly. Then came 1973, the real breakthrough. Bob entered a winning streak that would secure his place among the greats of his time. He won Mr. Los Angeles, one of the most iconic titles on the West Coast, home to legends like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Franco Columbu. Then came another victory at Mr. Pacific Coast, strengthening his reputation as a well-rounded, technical competitor. But the peak arrived with his victory at the IFBB Mr. America medium class, one of the most coveted awards of that era. That one didn't just crown his effort. It officially made him a rising star on the international bodybuilding stage. The bodybuilding press quickly caught on to the rising phenomenon. Bob started showing up in magazine columns and feature stories that praised his almost artistic symmetry and the calm, composed way he carried himself on stage. He wasn't the explosive, over-the-top type. Instead, he radiated a quiet confidence that won over judges and crowds alike. His performance was the perfect blend of strength and aesthetics, the kind of balance that fans of bodybuilding's golden era deeply admired. Behind the scenes, Bob remained the same relentless worker. While others got lost in fame, he stuck to his disciplined routine, splitting his time between intense training sessions and art classes. That dual vision, the athlete and the artist, shaped his identity. His body was his living sculpture, and every competition was another exhibition of a masterpiece in progress. Every detail mattered. Every move had a purpose. By the end of 1973, there was no doubt left. Bob was no longer just a promising newcomer. His name now stood among the top IFBB competitors, and his story proved that real success isn't about luck. It's about consistency and patience. 1974 marked the beginning of Bob's full rise to stardom. After years of hard work and an unshakable sense of discipline, he reached the top of American bodybuilding by winning the IFBB Mr. America overall title. This wasn't just another trophy. It was validation that he had reached the same level as the greats of his generation. On stage, Bob impressed with a near-perfect mix of power, grace, and proportion. His presence was magnetic. While others chased sheer size and aggression, Bob showed that true dominance came from aesthetics and control. With the national title under his belt, Bob didn't slow down. In 1975, he hit the absolute peak of his career, winning both the IFBB Pro Mr. Universe and the IFBB Pro World Championships. These victories catapulted him onto the international stage, cementing his place among the most admired bodybuilders in the world. For many fans, this was the height of the so-called aesthetic era, a time when balance, definition, and artistic posing mattered more than raw mass. Bob embodied that philosophy perfectly, becoming the living symbol of the ideal physique so many athletes aspired to achieve. During those golden years, Bob became a regular at the legendary Gold's Gym in Venice Beach, the epicenter of the bodybuilding world. The gym was buzzing with legends like Arnold Schwarzenegger, Ken Waller, and Ed Corney, icons who would turn the sport into a global cultural phenomenon. Inside those walls, the clanking of iron mixed with laughter, diet talk, and debates about posing technique. Bob wasn't the loudest guy in the room, but his calm, focused demeanor caught everyone's eye, even the biggest stars. He was respected by all, not just for his flawless physique, but for the humility with which he carried his success. His training philosophy also stood out. Bob didn't believe in extremes. He believed in precision and consistency. Methodical, detail-oriented, and incredibly technical, he studied his body the way a sculptor studies a statue, searching for imperfections invisible to most. While many athletes chased rapid growth, Bob preferred to refine, polish, and perfect. His approach reflected a deep understanding of the physical arts, a direct result of his fine arts background. For him, the stage was a gallery, and his body, a living sculpture. Audiences were captivated by his stage presence. Every pose seemed meticulously crafted to project harmony and calm. Bob didn't need exaggerated gestures. Just raising his arms or tightening his abs was enough to draw applause from the crowd. He embodied the ideal of symmetry that defined classic 1970s bodybuilding, the perfect midpoint between Franco Columbu's raw power and Frank Zane's elegance, the flawless balance of strength and artistry. These years also cemented his image in the bodybuilding magazines of the era. Journalists called him the sculptor of the human body, and his journey inspired a new generation of athletes to see bodybuilding not just as competition, but as self-expression. At a time when the sport was beginning to gain global recognition, Bob stood as proof that a bodybuilder could be more than an athlete. He could be an artist, a symbol of discipline, and a representation of classical beauty. By the end of 1975, Bob had reached what most would call the ultimate peak. He had the titles, the recognition, and the respect. But more than that, he had earned something even rarer: the admiration of his peers and the certainty that he had left his mark on an entire era. Over the years, Bob went beyond the competitive stage and became a true icon of global bodybuilding. Between 1983 and 1986, his face was everywhere, appearing constantly in top magazines of the time like Muscle and Fitness, Flex, and Muscle Mag International. These features didn't just focus on workouts or diets. They explored mindset, motivation, and lifestyle. Bob's image represented a new kind of athlete, balanced, technical, and artistic, still carrying the timeless charm of the golden era. The magazines hailed him as the perfect example of symmetry and elegance. While many bodybuilders tried to impress with sheer size and aggressive posing, Bob stood out for his natural flow and control. His calm posture, steady gaze, and precise gestures made him unmistakable. He didn't just show muscle, he told a story with every pose. That expressive quality fascinated photographers and art directors alike, turning him into one of the most photographed athletes of the 1980s. His image graced gym walls, ads, and posters, inspiring thousands of young lifters around the world. Beyond magazines, Bob became a respected voice in training and motivation videos and articles. He wrote and spoke about bodybuilding with depth and reflection, as someone who believed the body was a reflection of the mind. He often said that true strength came from consistency and faith, not just genetics. His message was simple but powerful. With discipline and purpose, anyone could change their life. That mindset earned him admiration not only as an athlete, but as a genuine example of resilience and inner balance. During this period, bodybuilding itself was changing. The classic aesthetic ideals were slowly giving way to the era of the mass monsters, physiques that were bigger, heavier, and more extreme. As the sport began to focus on size over proportion, Bob stayed true to harmony and reminded people that the beauty of bodybuilding was in balance, not excess. His stance helped preserve the legacy and respect of the aesthetic era, a period many still regard as the most elegant chapter in the sport's history. But Bob's public image wasn't limited to competitions or magazine covers. Before reaching his career peak, he had made brief appearances in the underground film scene of the 1970s, participating in artistic productions and photo projects celebrating the male form. Though sometimes controversial, these experiences showed his bold side and his long-standing relationship with art and photography, worlds he deeply appreciated. Over time, however, that phase faded into the background, especially after a profound personal transformation in the mid-1970s, his religious conversion, which gave him a new way of looking at fame and purpose. Looking back, it's impossible to ignore Bob's cultural impact on bodybuilding. He served as a bridge between two generations, between the artistic and the competitive, the classic and the modern. His presence in magazines, gyms, and even on screen made him a symbol of transition, a man who evolved without ever losing his essence. In 1975, at the peak of his career and right after winning the Mr. Universe title, Bob experienced a transformation that would completely change his life's direction. The man who had spent years chasing physical perfection discovered a new kind of strength, spiritual strength. Amid the applause and the bright lights, he felt an emptiness that trophies and muscles couldn't fill. It was in that moment of reflection that Bob had a profound spiritual awakening, becoming what Americans call a born-again Christian. That decision didn't just close one chapter. It opened a new one filled with faith and purpose. The change was radical. Shortly after his conversion, Bob stepped away from competition and moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, seeking a quieter, more spiritual life. There, he found a new calling. He became an evangelist, traveling across the U.S. and giving talks about faith, perseverance, and personal transformation. In churches and community gatherings, he spoke openly about his journey, admitting his mistakes and sharing how God had shown him a new path. For many young people, Bob became living proof that it's never too late to turn your life around, even after fame. One of the most defining parts of this new chapter was his decision to renounce the use of steroids and performance-enhancing drugs, something that was becoming increasingly common in the sport. Bob knew how much those substances had affected not just his body, but his mind and soul as well. He began advocating for a more natural and disciplined way of life, built on harmony between body and spirit. Strength, he said, shouldn't come from external substances. It should come from faith and self-control. This mindset set him apart from many athletes and made him a rare, authentic voice in the bodybuilding world. His new routine reflected his inner transformation. Bob kept training, but with a different purpose now, no longer for trophies or applause, but for balance and well-being. Bodybuilding was no longer the goal. It had become a tool for faith. In his talks, he often compared sculpting the body to refining the soul. Just like we train the muscle, we need to strengthen the spirit, he would say, with the calm conviction of a man who had learned to value the invisible just as much as the visible. This new outlook led Bob to inspire a whole generation of Christian athletes who saw sports as a way to honor God. He began attending faith-based and athletic events, always emphasizing that the body is a temple, and taking care of it is a way of showing gratitude to the Creator. His testimony carried weight because it came from someone who had lived through the extremes of vanity and fame. He didn't preach from a pedestal, but from a place of humility and experience. That authenticity made his words resonate deeply with athletes and fans searching for meaning beyond appearance. Over the years, Bob showed that faith didn't take him away from bodybuilding. It reconnected him with its true purpose. For him, every workout was a form of meditation, a spiritual discipline. Every small victory was a moment of gratitude. His life came to revolve around a simple but powerful belief. There's no greater victory than conquering yourself. Through that philosophy, he redefined the image of the bodybuilder, not just as someone admired for muscle, but as a soul constantly evolving. Bob didn't view training as something purely physical. He saw it as self-discovery. To him, the body was a laboratory, and each set was an experiment in finding the perfect balance between strength and aesthetics. That mindset led him, in 1975, to create his own method, mass-density training, a system designed to build muscle size without losing definition. The secret was intensity, constantly challenging the body with new loads, new techniques, and, above all, an open and adaptive mindset. One of the most famous aspects of his training approach was his focus on calves, his weak point. Instead of saving them for the end of his workouts like most athletes did, Bob started training them first, hammering out 20 to 25 sets per session. It was a clear statement of his philosophy: don't hide from your weaknesses, face them head-on. This strategy not only strengthened his calves, but became a symbol of his belief that persistence and discipline could turn any flaw into a strength. Another core principle of mass-density training was using weights about 10% heavier than usual. Bob believed the body had to be surprised to grow. By gradually increasing resistance, he stimulated both strength and muscle thickness, not just definition. His workouts were intense and meticulously planned. Every movement was executed with precision and control, no sloppy reps. To Bob, training was an art form. Every set was a brushstroke, every muscle a sculpture in progress. Birdsong was also known for incorporating advanced techniques like forced reps, supersets, and tri-set training, which demanded serious mental and physical endurance. His goal was to keep the body under constant, intelligent stress, forcing growth through controlled discomfort. Progress begins the moment you go past where your body wants to stop, he often said. During his sessions, rest periods were short, focus was absolute, and determination was unshakable. He wasn't famous for genetics. He was admired for his ability to endure fatigue and turn pain into progress. His diet reflected the same mix of discipline and mindfulness. Bob followed a high-protein plan with lean meats, eggs, cottage cheese, and vegetables, spread across 4 to 6 small meals a day. He believed that eating consistently was just as important as training consistently. He also supplemented with liver tablets, brewer's yeast, and vitamin E, which he considered essential for recovery and overall vitality. At a time when sports nutrition was still basic, his approach was remarkably advanced and calculated. Perhaps the most human part of Bob's philosophy was his relationship with rest and mindset. He believed that mood directly affected performance. If he felt tired or unmotivated, he preferred to rest, eat well, and come back stronger the next day rather than train without purpose. "You can't build anything great with a tired mind," he'd say. To him, rest wasn't weakness. It was part of the process of growth, both physical and spiritual. Bob Birdsong's competitive journey is a faithful reflection of his evolution as both athlete and man. From his first victories in the early 1970s to his farewell from the stage in the late 80s, every achievement represented more than sculpted muscle. It represented years of quiet dedication, discipline, and belief in his own potential. The year 1973 marked the first major breakthrough in his competitive career. Bob won 2 titles that gave him national recognition: Mr. Los Angeles, AU, and Mr. Pacific Coast, AU, both prestigious on the American circuit. Those wins were the reward for years of patience and relentless work since his debut in 1971. He was no longer just a promising athlete. He was now a respected name. Fans began to see in Bob the rare balance of strength, aesthetics, and humility that would define his career. Then came 1974, the year of his crowning achievement. By winning the IFBB Mr. America, Bob reached the pinnacle of U.S. bodybuilding, taking not only his category, but also the overall title. It was the moment the skinny kid from Tennessee proved he could stand among the giants. His balanced physique, perfect control, and charismatic stage presence captivated the judges. That victory cemented his image as an athlete who didn't just train hard. He treated the human body as a masterpiece in constant refinement. The following year, 1975, Bob reached the absolute peak of his career, winning 2 of the most prestigious bodybuilding titles in the world: the IFBB Pro Mr. Universe and the IFBB Pro World Championships. These victories placed him among the elite of international bodybuilding and made him a symbol of the aesthetic era. At that time, the sport was going through a transition, and Bob stood out as a representative of elegance and symmetry in an age increasingly obsessed with sheer mass. He proved that true strength lies in harmony, and it was precisely that philosophy that took him to the top. Even after his competitive peak, Bob continued to show consistency and passion for the sport. In 1979, he competed in the Mr. Olympia, the most prestigious bodybuilding contest in the world, and placed 5th. An impressive achievement in an era dominated by legends like Frank Zane and Mike Mentzer. Throughout the 1980s, he stayed competitive, earning podium finishes at major events such as the Grand Prix Denver, Canada Pro Cup, and Night of Champions. His longevity on stage proved that his dedication wasn't a phase, it was a way of life. During that time, Birdsong displayed a rare quality: the ability to evolve without losing his identity. Even as bodybuilding began favoring bigger, more extreme physiques, he stayed loyal to the classic ideals of proportion and symmetry. In 1989, Bob Birdsong officially said goodbye to the stage, retiring from professional competition after appearing at the Niagara Falls Pro Invitational. By then, he had dedicated nearly 4 decades to the sport, building a legacy as an athlete, artist, and example of discipline. His farewell wasn't filled with sadness, but with gratitude. He had fulfilled his purpose and left behind not just trophies, but a message. True success isn't about beating others. It's about staying faithful to your values until the end. Bob holds a special place in the history of world bodybuilding. He was one of the last great names of the so-called Silver Era, a time when classic aesthetics and balanced proportions defined the ideal physique. As the sport shifted toward extreme size and mass, Bob remained a guardian of elegance and harmony, reminding everyone that real bodybuilding was, above all, an art form. His body wasn't just a collection of muscles. It was a sculpture shaped by patience, discipline, and an artist's sensitivity. Though he never had the mainstream fame of icons like Arnold Schwarzenegger or Frank Zane, Bob built a solid and deeply respected reputation among those who truly understood the sport. His quiet dedication and artistic authenticity made him a rare example of integrity in a world often driven by ego and competition. His fine arts background was evident not only in how he posed, but in how he thought about the body. Every line, every angle, every proportion was an intentional expression of aesthetics. He wasn't just competing, he was communicating something deeper every time he stepped on stage. Bob's legacy goes far beyond the physical. His life story, from an insecure, bullied kid to a champion and man of faith, inspired countless natural and Christian athletes around the world. He proved that faith, discipline, and physical excellence can coexist without sacrificing humanity for vanity. In a world where many lose themselves chasing recognition, Bob stood out as someone who found purpose. He showed that the real temple isn't the body itself, but the inner strength that sustains and guides it. As the years went by, Bob never truly left bodybuilding behind. He continued to attend seminars, lectures, and events celebrating the history and philosophy of the sport. In his talks, he emphasized respecting one's body, training with awareness, and remembering that success only matters when it walks hand in hand with humility. His voice became that of a mentor, someone who didn't just teach how to train, but how to live with purpose. Many young athletes who heard him speak walked away not just with new techniques, but with a new understanding of what it really means to be strong. Bob's influence also extends to the modern revival of natural and classic bodybuilding, which has gained momentum again in recent decades. In a time of excess and artificiality, his example serves as a timeless reminder that the most admirable physique is the one that radiates balance, symmetry, and authenticity. His photos and videos from the 1970s and 1980s still circulate among fans and historians, not as relics of the past, but as enduring references of beauty and discipline. Bob Birdsong was, and remains, the face of classic aesthetics in its purest form. For Bob Birdsong, bodybuilding was always about much more than lifting weights or winning trophies. He believed the true purpose of the sport was self-mastery, the ability to control your body, mind, and heart in the face of adversity. Bodybuilding isn't just about muscles, he used to say. It's about patience, faith, and balance. That mindset turned every workout into a life lesson. For Birdsong, the gym was a kind of temple, a place to learn humility, perseverance, and the art of starting over every single day, even when your body begged for rest. He often taught that the body's real power comes from the mind and the spirit, and that every athlete should use the sport as a mirror of their character. It wasn't about beating others. It was about conquering yourself, your fear, your doubt, your discouragement. That simple but profound philosophy made Birdsong admired not just for his physique, but for his serenity and wisdom. He reminded everyone that the body fades, but character and faith endure. That message made him deeply inspiring to athletes and to anyone searching for purpose. His journey, from a skinny, insecure kid to Mr. America, and later to a man devoted to sharing faith, represents something far greater than success: the complete transformation of body and soul. Birdsong proved that bodybuilding can be a path of self-discovery, a way to balance strength with compassion, pride with gratitude. He used muscle not as a symbol of vanity, but as living proof of the human ability to change one's destiny through faith and discipline. Even decades after his peak, Bob Birdsong is still remembered as a quiet icon, an artist of the physique and a man who found redemption and purpose both inside and outside the gym. His story endures because it speaks to something universal: the human desire to grow. He showed us that true greatness means staying true to yourself, even as the world changes around you. And maybe that's why his image still feels so alive, a portrait of a man who united strength and spirituality in one lifetime. Now that you've heard this incredible story of perseverance, faith, and determination, take a moment to think about what bodybuilding means to you. It's not just about muscle. It's about believing that change is possible from the inside out. If this video inspired you, hit that like button. It really helps the channel keep bringing stories like this to life. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, because here we tell the stories of the great names who shaped bodybuilding and inspired anyone who dares to dream big. Want to support our work even more? Become a channel member and get access to exclusive content about the Golden Era and its legendary athletes. And of course, we want to hear from you. Which part of Bob Birdsong's story moved you the most? Drop it in the comments. Your thoughts help keep this community alive. Don't go anywhere. On the final screen, you'll see another amazing video, the inspiring story of another legendary athlete who, like Birdsong, proved that the body can be the purest expression of the soul. Click there and keep going with us on this journey through the legacy of the true giants of bodybuilding.